Good morning and happy Tuesday. We are so excited you're joining us. Giving the science and technology in the people program. Which is truly where reminder we are moved by anything throughout the day. We encourage you to join and engage with us in any way that you can. There'll be a link in the comment section for you to follow. So we'd like to start with our viewers who early and now extra prizes. If you are drawn during this section of the raffle, a team member will reach out to you about claiming this morning raffle prizes before we get on to our first. So with that, starting with our first raffle, our early bird winner is Mr. Cyrus. Thank you again, meeting, and a teacher will is Ben Varhula. Thank you so much for giving a prize. All early donors are eligible. Other raffles happening throughout the day. We have Anna Gutierrez, another one of our awesome mentors. Again, for being a mentor in this giving day. Then our German, so much again. German, wonderful. So the teammates for ISTL will reach out to you. But now we'll pivot back to what we're here for. Again, celebrating that innovation can happen anywhere. It is not just confined to a classroom or an office or a laboratory. The innovation is about the people, where people take risks, learn from their failures, and continue to grow and learn. So without much further ado, I want to engage mentors and just extraordinary Prince Cloud Architect, Microsoft.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Becky. Hi, everyone. Very nice to meet all of you. My name is Kevin Gates. I am a cloud solution architect at Microsoft. I am honored to be here. I've done a number of virtual career fairs over the years, and it's wonderful to be here with you and with ISTI. I just gave you guys a little bit of a taste of what I do. I'm a principal cloud solution architect, and what that really means is I am a part of a team of people who help support our customers. And we have people who support our customers from a relationship standpoint. So you might think of those people as an account executive. So they own the overall relationship between Microsoft and the customer. We have people who are technical, who can jump in and help that customer understand what are some of the technologies Microsoft has to offer. And then we have people who do support at Microsoft, so they help when things go wrong. And then, of course, about half of the company at Microsoft are engineers. So they are the ones who are making all of the different products and services that we have, from Xbox to Xbox Live to Office to Windows. They're making all of those different technologies. And so I am on the technical side, and I work alongside our account executives. So they work with the customer says, hey, I have a problem and I would like my Microsoft to help solve that problem. And then they would pull in someone like me who has some skills in that particular technology area and is willing to work with that customer. As you can imagine, Microsoft is huge. There are so many different kinds of technologies that you can get into. And so what I've had to do over the years is figure out what area of technology am I more passionate about. And that is one of the great things about technology in general. It's so broad. You can do everything from web design to support to engineering. You can really pick the area that aligns more to your heart. So it's a very big field, and you have many different options to choose as you're navigating that. So my role as a principal cloud solution architect is to listen to the customer and help them understand what Microsoft technologies can support them. A great example of that is Uber. A lot of us have used Uber over the years. And one of the concerns that Uber had going in was that, hey, how do we make sure that the driver who's picking you up is the person who is supposed to pick you up? So they wanted to make sure that an Uber driver didn't let their friend take over their shift and then have someone else driving you around. And so what Uber wanted to do was, how can we use technology to make sure that the driver who is driving you is the person that registered as a driver with Uber? And they use artificial intelligence to do that kind of matching. And so they look at your face when you start your shift as an Uber driver, and they compare that to a photo that you've given them in advance, and they match them to make sure that they're the same. And if so, it allows that driver to start their shift and start taking customers. And so that's a taste of what I do at Microsoft, is listening, understanding, and then bringing forward some technologies that can solve their problem. So I'll tell you a little bit about my background, and then from there, I will show you a little bit of the day in the life of what I do at Microsoft. First, I think it is worth clarifying that I am Kevin Gates, but I am not the rapper Kevin Gates. So that is someone else. I am the Kevin Gates who has a wife named Lori, a son named Maurice, who's 7, and I live here in the Chicagoland area. So I was born and raised here in Chicago. I just like to give a little snippet of some of the interesting things that my son says over the years. And I think it really reflects how technology has infiltrated his life. Some of the things that he would say is, he started to recognize the fact that there are lots of domain names. And so one time he said to me, "Hey, Dad, I'm thirsty.com." But on the flip side, I mentioned a DVD to him once, and he said, "What's a DVD?" Because you can pretty much ensure that he's watched plenty of movies and shows over the years, but never on a DVD, just because we're streaming so much. Another funny one is, "Dad, when you're a grandpa, who's going to work so that I can buy things?" I thought this was pretty interesting, and this sparked a conversation with him about how he's going to have to find his passion and find a job and start doing that so that he could buy his own stuff. And so I usually play this game, I usually play this game as I'm giving presentations about 2 truths and a lie. So this is a really good icebreaker that walks you through 2 true things about a person and 1 thing that's a lie. And so the 3 statements that I would make here about myself is: 1, I dropped out of high school. 2 is that I started working at Microsoft at the age of 20. And 3 is I started working at Microsoft with only 5 months of technology experience. And so 2 of these are true. 1 is the lie. I will give you a few seconds to decide which one you think might be the lie. And the reveal is the 5 months. And so the odd thing here is I joined Microsoft with 4 months of technology experience. And part of that was due to the fact that I found and discovered technology, which I had no idea existed. And then the second is that I did good work and got noticed by someone who worked at Microsoft. So it is true that I dropped out of high school. I started working, I went to an organization called IC here in the city of Chicago, where I learned about web development, business and technical skills. And then from there, I met someone who worked at Microsoft. He noticed me, he noticed my passion, and I started working at Microsoft almost 20 years ago in January. So I've been at Microsoft for a good while, and I've seen a lot of different things over time. This is one of our rooms we have downtown at Microsoft, at the Microsoft Technology Center, which is near Michigan and Randolph. So we have an office there where we used to have about 300 people work out of that office. And then there's another Microsoft office in Downers Grove near Highway 88 in Highland. And so we have another 300 or so Microsoft employees that work there. But this is a view of our Envisioning Center, which is $1 million room we have downtown. And the whole idea of this room is, instead of just giving PowerPoint presentations, we're taking people through a day in the life of using the Microsoft technology. So we have these different vignettes, like a little cafe, work office. This one here, we can change the background and the look and feel to look like a doctor's office, construction site, etc. And then here we have a home office, and we show the interactions of two people as they use Microsoft technology to do things that you would typically want to do in a workplace environment. Like, having conference calls, planning, designing, doing all this great work for customers. But it does serve as a really good backdrop to highlight a little bit of my background and how I got to Microsoft. And I love to highlight the fact that, my creativity and architecture came in the beginning from Lego. So I loved playing Lego as a kid, dumping out all my Lego on the floor Saturday morning, building something and creating something and then tearing it apart and doing something all over again. And so that experience taught me that I really enjoyed creating and building things and being hands-on. So if we fast forward to second grade, I worked in a candy store across the street from my elementary school. And that experience really taught me just a good basic work ethic. So if I work, I will then get money. I can then buy candy, and then I can also buy pizza. But I was able to feed myself and have, lunch and all that stuff. But that really was my foundation for just realizing that, hey, if I work, good things will happen. Fast forward a little bit, I went to Lincoln Park High School, which is on Armitage and Halsted, wonderful school. I ended up starting my freshman year a second time. So I was demoted the first year, and then the second year I dropped out of high school. So I pretty much felt like I ruined my life at that point in time. And so luckily I found Prologue Alternative High School, where I started to learn about trigonometry and started working towards getting a high school diploma. This is where things shifted, because right after that, or during that time, I found out about this organization called Catholic Charities that does culinary training. And so they had a program that said, hey, come in, we'll teach you how to cook, and then you can probably get a job at a restaurant somewhere. And so I did that, got a job at Bertucci's Pizzeria, which was right across the street. And I worked there for 3 years, working my way up from a busboy to the pizza station, which was, all the restaurant was all about the pizza. So I was proud about the progress that I made working my way to the pizza station. I worked at the House of Blues. And through all this time, I felt like I was destined to be a culinary cook, a chef, a cook, for my entire career. When I was growing up, I wanted to be a doctor. But realizing that I had a hard time getting through school, I said, I don't know if I am made to go through 8 to 10 more years of school to be a doctor. And so when I found myself down this culinary path, I said, you know what, this must be destined for me. Whatever it is that I'm going to do, I'm just going to do the best that I can at it. And so I just had my goals set on being a good cook and maybe opening up my own restaurant one day, but just always being the best I can at whatever it is I'm doing. But it was around that time that I discovered IC Stars from my teacher at Prologue. And he said, hey, there's an organization called IC Stars that'll teach you web development, real life project management skills. They throw real world simulations at you. And the idea is you learn to be a web developer, you learn technology, and you also meet people from different companies along the way. And so I did IC Stars for 4 months. And when midway through IC Stars, I met someone who worked at Microsoft, and he took me under his wing, helped develop me, and then brought me into Microsoft January 2001. And I've been there ever since. And so I've got some core tips and tricks that I've learned that I'll share with you shortly. So, being at Microsoft, as I mentioned, I've been here since 2001. I think Microsoft is a fantastic organization and fits well into that vision of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, which is there is such a big company. You can do so many things, and you can also reinvent yourself. So you can start out focusing on things like artificial intelligence and then say, you know what? I want to change over and work on databases, or I can live here in Chicago and say, you know what, I'd like to move somewhere else, and I can pretty much keep that same job. especially in this more virtual world that we have right now. And so these are some lifelong lessons that I learned that I think are absolutely critical. And if you were to take one thing out of this meeting, it would be what I'm sharing here. In fact, I usually, if I meet someone who is just getting started in technology or just coming out of school, these are the life skills that has gotten me from being a high school dropout to having 20 years at Microsoft. And the first thing is to learn how you learn the best. There's a concept called learning styles. And so some people are more visual, some people are more kinetic. They need to actually touch and do things. Some people are auditory, some people are mathematical or logical. So if you look up learning styles, you'll see all the different ones that are out there. But I learned that I was very visual and very kinetic, very hands-on. So that means if I need to learn a new topic, let's say Microsoft drops a new technology into my lap, or I want to go interview for a job somewhere and they say, hey, you have to go learn this. What I do is, one, look at videos so that I can understand the concept. And then two, because I know I'm kinetic and I'm hands-on, I have to then go and apply and do it so that it sticks and I learn more from those hands-on experiences. And so the best thing you can do for yourself is know how you learn the best and then make sure you're taking advantage of that. The other thing is identifying your passion and pursuing it. For me, initially it was cooking. And so I said, I'm going to work my way up from busboy to the salad station, to the pasta station, to the pizza station. But when I discovered technology, I said, oh, I have a whole new passion. And now I'm going to put in the work to build that. So you've probably heard of the phrase, you never work a day in your life when you're doing something that you're passionate about. But I think if you're really trying to figure out what it is you want to do as a career, you have to start with what you're passionate about. And you might be able to mash that up with something else, like technology. Volunteer to gain free experience, to gain free skills, and to meet people and build connections. I think that's absolutely critical. And that ties into the next point, which is never say no to an opportunity to learn or help. And so if someone's asking for volunteers to help set up the computer lab or to help build the website for the school, I always raise my hand, even though I may not feel like I'm the perfect one or I have 100% of the skills. I know that if I can at least bring 50% of skills, I can develop that next 25 or 30 or 40%. And then along the way, I learn things, I get free experience, and then I also meet people who can then vouch for me and say, oh yes, Kevin learned these things and he did all this great work. So then you also want to connect with people, get noticed. You always want to do the best you can. And that is a lot of the reason why I made it to Microsoft, is because I did not know there was someone when I was at IC Stars that was looking and monitoring me until they reached out and said, hey, I've been following you for the past couple months and your progress at IC Stars, and I think you should work at Microsoft. And so if I had been phoning it in and doing the bare minimum, none of that would have happened. So you always want to do the best you can. Figure out your brand. For me, my brand is around, being able to take complex topics and break it down in very easy, understandable ways. And so a lot of the ways I do that is through the whiteboarding I do, the way I try to organize and plan topics. These are all things that I think are a part of my brand and how other people might identify me. So you have to ask yourself, what is your brand? If you had a friend introduce you, or if you had a colleague introduce you to someone else, what are the things that you would want them to say about you? And then the idea here is that you learn, you master, and you teach, which is my own personal motto, which is I love to learn things, I'm driven to master it, and then I like to teach other people along the way. But you're never done doing that. You always have more work to do. And so I always have to repeat that process over the years. And so if you want to grab a screenshot of this, give this to anyone or use these as talking points yourself when you talk to someone about how they might be able to start from where they're at and get to where they want to go. These are some of the roles I've had over the years. So here you can see I was a developer at IC Stars. And then when I joined Microsoft, I was fairly entry level. So I was an associate technology specialist. And so what Microsoft did is said, hey, we're going to give you Office and we're going to give you Windows. And we want you to go around and just give demos of these products. And so I had to learn Windows. I had to learn like what are some of the cool things people want to see, and then actually play with Windows and play around and actually try out all the stuff that I was going to show other people, so that when it was time to show it, it was nice and smooth and they could see what Windows can do, and then hopefully buy Windows later. I managed our data center for a while, so I switched over to a more hardware and technical role. And then I went back into sales or technical sales. And so I was helping sell some of Microsoft's products like Office 365. After a while of doing that, this was about 12 years, they said, hey, we think you should be in a leadership position. And so I was technical director of our Microsoft Technology Center. And then from there, I took on more business roles. And then I've since come back to my more technical roots, where I spent a lot more time digging into the nitty-gritty of technology. Hold, please. I talked a little bit about whiteboarding. I'll show you a little bit of that. But one of my big things is just taking something complex and making it easy to understand. And there are so many of us that are visual. We are all visual people. Being able to start with a blank whiteboard and build it up to more complex topics is something that I'm really passionate about. And so here you can see some diagrams that I've done with customers where we start with a completely blank whiteboard. I take the time to listen to their problems and their challenges. And then from there, I illustrate how Microsoft technologies can address each of those problems. So I would have never thought that, a skill that I stumbled across, which was just my love for drawing and visualizing, could help me at Microsoft. So a day in the life of myself at Microsoft, one I would say is developing my own passion and my own skills. At the end of the day, I'm a technical person that gets pulled in to help a customer do something or help them understand what Microsoft technologies can do. And if I don't know that myself, I'm kind of useless. I mean, it's not too different from an athlete who does, who needs to practice, train, play games, do all these things so that when it's game day, they are ready to perform. And so it's a really big part of what I have to do as a technology specialist is take that time when I'm not on the field to actually build my skills and learn. And then from there, when it's time to show up at a customer meeting, I can go all out and show all the cool technology that we have. So I get to play with a lot of cool cutting edge technology. One of the best stories I have of early access to technology was with the Xbox and the Xbox Connect, which is our vision camera that we used to have for the Xbox. Before that came out, someone at the Microsoft office brought it in, and I spent an evening in the office by myself playing on the Xbox Connect before it was released to the public, and it was before it was even widely known. And I got to sit there and just play, and I was truly amazed at what the technology could do, but just also the access that I had to the technology. I spent a lot of time communicating with some of my colleagues, with customers, and then I spent a lot of time in customer meetings. So that means having to prepare, which means sometimes more meetings, having to do learning, research, planning the agenda and flow of topics, because you might have a customer come to you and say, hey, I'd like to talk about these 18 things. How do you break that down into meaningful chunks so that, the hour that you have doesn't go away too quickly? Whiteboarding and demoing, and then also doing some troubleshooting. So I thought I would take a little bit of time just to show you some of the things that I do with customers. One of them is, when it comes to developing my skills and passion, it's understanding what technologies Microsoft has out there. So if we go back to the Uber example that I gave earlier, They want a driver to take a picture in the morning before they start their shift and compare it to a picture that has previously been registered with Uber. I would take time to have a call with that customer and say, explain more about the challenges, what are some of the pros and cons of what you're looking to do. And then here I can show them what some of the Microsoft technologies are capable of doing. This is our artificial intelligence platform running inside of Azure, which is one of Microsoft's global services. And this, you can give a picture and then it will give you all of this analysis from the picture that it can see using its computer vision. So here we can see there's a picture of 3 individuals here on the screen. And if we hover over, we can see that there was face detection being used. So it's identifying the face in this picture, which is the first kind of marvel. It finds the face, identifies it, but then it's able to do a little bit more than that. So here it's able to tell the gender, it's able to predict the age of the individual, it's able to identify hair color, emotion, whether they're wearing glasses or not. So these are all things that Uber is able to do. And I would show this to Uber and say, if that driver brings up their phone in the morning and takes a picture, this is all the data that you would have in that picture to use to compare against a pre-registered picture. Here we can see some other pictures. So here, this is identifying the face of this worker and doing that same kind of prediction. And you can see here that there is a ton of data that it is providing us that your application can read and decide how to behave or how to act. And so here we can see age, what's the ratio of how their facial expression is looking, are they wearing glasses? And you'll see this confidence score as you're looking through here. This means that confidence of 1 means that it's absolutely sure this person's wearing glasses. But if you saw a confidence score of 0.5, meaning half, it would mean 50%. So it would tell you, hey, I kind of think this person has glasses. And so this is the same kind of confidence score that Uber would have when they are comparing those 2 pictures. They would take the original picture, the new picture, and they would compare the confidence score of those. And you could say that, hey, if the system says that it's 80% confident that it's the same person, you may allow that person to log in. But if I had my brother take over my Uber shift and there was a comparison and the confidence was 0, then you would reject that person and say, hey, you're not able to start this shift because you're not the actual driver. So there are technologies like this that we showcase. Other ones here are around computer vision. So here we're giving it a picture of someone on a skateboard, and it is telling us that, hey, this is a person, and here it sees that this is a skateboard. And this is some of the data that it is giving us that it sees inside of the picture. So it says, hey, I see a skateboard. I'm pretty confident, it's about 90% confident that that person is on a skateboard. And then we can see all the other descriptions and things that it's pulled out of this picture. And so, my job is not to create this technology. There are people within Microsoft, those engineers that make this technology possible. My job is to understand what this technology can do and then bring it to the right customer and show them how they can use it to solve their problem. The other thing that I thought we could talk about is how you can train your own artificial intelligence model. And so let's say you wanted to build an artificial intelligence model that would allow you to take a picture of a can and have the computer tell you whether it was a can of Pepsi or a can of Coca-Cola. And so here we have a service where you can train the computer by giving it lots of sample images of Pepsi. You would give it lots of sample images of Coca-Cola, and then you would teach and train that model that, hey, those blue cans are Pepsi, those red cans are Coca-Cola. And then when you took a new picture, it would be able to compare and figure out which one of those cans that it used. And so we'll give a little bit of a demonstration on that on the whiteboard. So this is something that I do when I'm in customer meetings quite often is, get away from PowerPoint, actually show stuff in real life, but also jump over and give them some whiteboarding. And so here you'll see that I use an iPad. So I have an iPad here that I use to do my whiteboarding, and I just share my screen into the meeting here. So if we were to, let me just grab a bag here. If we were to build our own artificial intelligence model to compare cans, this is what that might look like. And so here, this would be our soda can model. And I talked earlier about how we would basically give the artificial intelligence service a bunch of cans of Coca-Cola. And if you think about it, right, if you thought about a can of Coke, you may, commonly see a picture of it taken straight on, just like this coffee can here, but there are other angles that people might take a picture of that coffee can. And so when you're building this artificial intelligence model, you would want to give it pictures of a can from all kinds of different angles, which is very similar to what we see in this picture here. And so we can see that there's some cans straight on, from the top, from the side. So you want to give it all of these different variations of what a can of Coke could look like. And then you tell the artificial intelligence model, hey, these are cans of Coke. You would then give it a whole bunch of pictures of Pepsi cans. And you would tell the model, these are Pepsi cans. Now you have a model that can recognize, hey, these are generally what Coke cans look like. These are generally what Pepsi cans look like. And so from here, you could build a website that lets you submit pictures. So this website would let us submit a picture. It would pass the picture to this AI model. So there's going to be input, the picture, and then the output being the result. And so now we can take use our smartphone. So here, this is going to be my smartphone. And I'm going to use my camera on my smartphone to take a picture of this can of Coke. That is not a good can of Coke. Here we go. I have a can here. It is Coke. And I take a picture of this, and then the app on my smartphone sends the picture to the website. The model then will compare and decide whether that can matches this model or does it match this. And it will come back and give me the result, and that result is going to equal Coke. And then my app inside of my phone would show a message that says, you just took a picture of a can of Coke. So I thought this was a good little example where we can, one, see how I use visual tools. And in a lot of ways, what I do as a technologist is teach people. So there's an element of teaching and making sure that people are with you and following and understanding, asking more questions as you're going along. So there's this whole element of the whiteboarding and the teaching. But the other angle here is helping you understand how artificial intelligence works, which is it's not really a huge black box. There is a lot of training that needs to happen for this artificial intelligence to work. So all of this work that we did up here was training that artificial intelligence result, and our app can basically figure out from there where to go and what to do. So I think this touched pretty well on a day in the life of me working at Microsoft. You know, as I touched on before, I need to have that baseline of skills myself. The result of that is I get to go out and play with cool technology and try stuff. And if stuff doesn't work, I go to our engineering team and I say, hey, I tried this stuff. This part could be a little bit better. And they say, you know what, great, thanks for that feedback. We're going to improve the service a little bit more. And so being on the bleeding edge of different technologies, you know, I spend a lot of my time doing email and IM for work, which is a pretty big part of my job. So being responsive and being present in meetings is very important. And then there's all the face-to-face time that I have with customers. So, you know, doing that preparation ahead of time, researching, figuring out, hey, how can I explain this complex concept to them so that they understand in a pretty easy way. And then I don't want to underestimate the troubleshooting, because sometimes people come to you and say, hey, this doesn't work, or I'm having troubles with this. And you need to be able to go through and say, well, did you try this? Did you try that? If that's not working, let's set up a call and I'll run through it with you together. So getting close to the end here, you know, my experiences at Microsoft, you know, a big part was figuring out my brand and how I wanted to be known at Microsoft. The other is being a problem solver. If you're always in the mindset of identifying a problem and then coming up with a solution, you have a wonderful framework for being successful in any kind of job. So you could say, hey, I see that it takes a long time for, it could be a job like at a fast food restaurant, right? You can say, hey, I see it takes a long time for us to, you know, get people spun up on their shifts and transition a team. And you can go to the manager and say, you know, why don't we try having someone start like 5 minutes earlier so that they have a little bit more time to get their stuff together and customers don't have to wait in line as long. You know, being that problem solver is something that is really important. Perception is reality. I learned that early in my career. I don't have the time to dive into the story now, but the idea is how people perceive your behavior is how they're going to think of you. So if you're not present on calls, on meetings, if your body language shows that you're doing this, it doesn't really show that you are engaged, and it's not giving off the right perception or brand of what you want to be associated with yourself. So never underestimate your body language and the message that that sends. I'm really big on learning from others, whether directly or indirectly. So I will, you know, have someone come over to the house, fix something, and I'll watch. And then I will be like, I will never need you to fix that for me again, because I just saw how you did it. I learned. And so, you know, taking the time to watch and learn from other people, or asking someone who has a skill that you want to show you how to do something. For me, I kept coding on the side. So even though in my day-to-day job at Microsoft, I don't do a ton of coding, I still do coding for my own website. I've built some apps over the years. And so I've never let go of my other passions that I have, because you never know when that can merge with technology, or if you lose your technology job, you still have another thing that you're passionate about you can fall back on. And then you always want to know your strengths and know what you're good at, and then play to that and take advantage of those things. So with that, I will close out my overview of being a cloud solution architect at Microsoft, and we'll see if we have any questions.
Thank you. And I'm hoping my technology is cooperating a little bit more now and that you can hear me. That was wonderful. And I think it's such an important role to see for our students, this linear pathway, but also this blend of passion and technology and passion and work that really came through in your presentation. So I love hearing that. I have some questions that I would love to ask. So I'm going to start with thinking back to your very, very, very early days when you first kind of dropped out of high school and were working to figure out kind of what were those next steps, what was one skill that you feel like you picked up early on that has either grown?
Let's see. I would say that's a good question. I would say, one thing for me was math and trigonometry was one of the things that I really didn't expect that I would really take to. So when I started going back to school, I started learning trigonometry and math. And for me, the big thing was understanding that there was so much math behind the science that I loved. So I loved understanding behind the scenes, how things worked, how complex things are made. And there is so much math that goes behind that. And so for me, that was really eye-opening and made me respect math a lot more and got me a little bit into trigonometry, and that going into trigonometry helped me teach other people trigonometry in my class who I saw struggling, and started that whole pattern of learn, mastering, and teaching. And so there was this cascading effect of learning about science, learning about math, and then taking it on and helping other people.
And then I'm asking again, I see my, if you hear me, but never opportunity. That's an important for our students. They're interested in about picking out a variety is not saying no, even if you get something that is perfectly aligned with your goal, benefits, and important choices.
I missed some of what you said there, Becky.
All good. And again, this is the beauty of technology being in and out.
Yeah,
I'm actually going to try. Oh, okay. So I was going to ask, in terms of seeking opportunities and never saying no, why is it beneficial or important for students not to say no to opportunities, even if they're not perfectly aligned with their specific interests?
Gotcha. So there are so many, I think it's valuable to take on things because there are so many skills that you can learn in that process. And one of it is, step number one is being open and honest about what you do know. So never misrepresent what you do know, but say, hey, I'm about 50% on this, but I really see this as an opportunity that'll help me get to 75% or get to that next level. And along the way, I know how I learn the best. And so it's not going to take me forever to learn these new skills. I know that, hey, if I go do these courses or I go watch these videos, I can learn these things really quickly. So identifying and being clear about that, and then, assuming you get that opportunity to volunteer or do it, from there you can do the best job that you can meet people, you can demonstrate that you can do all those things you said you can do, and ideally someone is monitoring, seeing what you're doing, and then recognizing that, hey, maybe this person would be good in another kind of role. So I always think of it as a stepping stone. You always want to do one great thing, and then when you move on to the next one, you can look back and show that person that you're interviewing and say, hey, look at how great I did in this previous job. And once you move on to the next job, you can say, hey, look at how great I did in these other 2 jobs and roles that I had. So you always want to keep building that up over time. It's not too different from having your credit rating. Your credit is important in life in terms of how they judge your financial responsibility. And so you want to have a good work rating or credit rating over time, and you always want to build upon that. Let me see if there's any other questions that I might not have touched on. I talked a little bit about what I wanted to do earlier on, of being a doctor, and then I rolled into cooking, and then from there I discovered technology, which I never thought was even possible, and so now I don't do as much cooking, and I definitely do a lot of the technology. And the other thing I really didn't touch on was just how COVID has impacted my life as a technologist. I didn't touch on this when I had it on the slide here, but one of the things that was a part of my life was traveling for customer meetings and conferences. So I would say about once a month, I would go out and go on site for a customer meeting. So if we had a session that was going to be, like 2 days, I would fly there, meet with the customer, sit down, and we would have these on-site meetings for about 2 days, and then I'd fly back home. So I would go on site for customer meetings and then also do conferences and training events. And so all that has gone away now, as you can imagine. And so a lot of my life is virtual and participating in meetings virtually, even running 6-8 hour meetings online sometimes.
Awesome. Kevin, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes. It broke up a little bit, but I can hear you.
Okay. I appreciate you answering those questions. For sure. Any questions, you are welcome to them in the comments. We will make sure that they have it. Otherwise, stay tuned. We'll be on this today to celebrate some creators, but I want to say thank you so much, and we appreciate you sharing your passion to get more in STEM today.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Fun.